I didn't know the man sleeping in the next room would change my entire life or die in my arms 6 months later. That's how I'd begin, if anyone ever asked me how it all started, and no one ever does. My name's Noah Carter. I was 34 years old when I hit rock bottom, sleeping in a broken-down RV, parked behind a mechanic shop in a small Arizona town called Red Mesa. My savings? Gone. My startup. Dead on arrival. I had traded a $150,000 a year cybersecurity job in Austin for a dream to launch a travel app that would change how people connect to places. Spoiler alert, it didn't. And neither did the people I thought would support me. I was alone, broke, sunburned, eating canned beans with plastic spoons. The only thing I hadn't lost yet was my pride, and even that was hanging by a thread. That's when I met Walter Reed. He was 79, lanky, pale eyes, slow shuffle, and an oxygen tube clipped to his nose. He knocked on the side of my RV one morning while I was brushing my teeth with bottled water. "Is you the guy living in this rust bucket?" he asked. I froze mid-brush. "Yeah, you a murderer or a junkie?" I spit into the grass. "Neither." He nodded. "Good. I need a roommate." That's how it began. He owned a fading yellow house just 2 blocks from where I parked, with paint peeling off the porch rails and weeds taller than a toddler. He said he didn't want to die alone and needed someone to mow the lawn and keep the damn nurse aides from stealing his pills. Rent? $0. Utilities? He'd cover them. Only condition? I had to stay in the house and help him when he asked. No visitors. No noise after 9 p.m. And never, under any circumstances, go into the basement. I was too desperate to ask questions. I packed up my RV that afternoon and moved into the smallest room of his creaky old house. The first week was strange. Walter didn't talk much. He mostly sat in a reclining chair by the window, watching people walk by as if he were waiting for someone. His room was filled with dusty books, military plaques, and a picture of a young woman in a white dress. "Your wife?" I asked once. He nodded, but didn't speak for 3 whole hours after that. I mowed the lawn, cooked us eggs and toast most mornings, replaced the dead light bulbs. He grumbled at first, but after a few days I caught him smiling behind his oxygen mask. While I tried to unclog the ancient bathroom sink, I started calling him Walt. He didn't correct me. Some nights we played chess, beat me every time. "You play like a man afraid of war," he said once. "I am," I replied. He didn't laugh. He just stared at the board and whispered, "You'll need to fix that." I still had my laptop and a battered old iPhone. I kept working on my app, though I knew in my gut it was a corpse. Still, Walt encouraged me. "You've got fire, Noah. Don't let it go out because your first house burned down." He had a way with words. Sharp, simple, but they stuck. Sometimes I wondered if he saw himself in me. Sometimes I wondered if I was just a warm body to fill the silence. 3 months in, Walt collapsed. I found him in the hallway, gasping, lips blue. I called 911, stayed with him the whole ride to the hospital. His COPD had worsened. The doctor said the stress could kill him if he didn't have someone looking after him 24/7. When Walt was discharged, he said only one thing. "I want you to have power of attorney, Noah." I blinked. "What? Why me? You live here? You help? You don't treat me like I'm already dead?" He didn't wait for my answer. The papers were drawn up by his lawyer the next day. One night, about a week after he returned from the hospital, I was helping Walt into bed when he grabbed my wrist tightly. "Noah. Yeah, if anything happens to me, there's a letter behind the radiator in my closet. Don't read it unless I'm gone. Promise me." I hesitated. "I promise." His eyes. Those old, watery, storm blue eyes looked into mine. "I mean it. Don't read it early, and don't go in the basement." That was the second time he said that. And this time, I listened. But I never forgot. The holidays came. Walt didn't put up decorations. Said Christmas was for people with illusions. I bought him a $12 knit beanie and left it on the kitchen table with a bow. Wore it the next morning without a word. By January, he was coughing blood. That's when I started recording things. Little things. His cough patterns, his appetite, his moods, his cryptic one-liners. I felt at the end creeping closer like shadows in a hospital corridor. One night I asked him if he was scared of dying. He said, "I'm scared of being erased." On February 4th, I woke up to silence. No wheezing through the walls, no soft creak of his recliner. I knocked on his door. No answer. I opened it. He was sitting up in bed, eyes closed, hands folded over his chest. He was gone. I stood there, frozen, waiting for him to breathe again. Just one more breath, just one more word. But there was only stillness. And then I remembered the letter. Behind the radiator, hands shaking, I pulled it out. A yellow envelope. My name on it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. Noah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Hope you didn't snoop early. If you did, I forgive you. I wasn't the best man in life, but I tried to make peace near the end. That house you're living in, it's yours now, but that's not the important part. There's something in the basement, something I've hidden for 45 years. The key is in the chessboard. Take it, go down. And if you still want to run when it's over, I won't blame you. But if you stay, everything I have becomes yours. Love, Walt. I dropped the letter. My hands were ice. What the hell was in the basement? Why me? Why now? I didn't sleep that night. The letter lay on the kitchen table, lit by a dim bulb that flickered with every gust of wind. I read it again and again, each time hoping the words would change. But they didn't. The key is in the chessboard. There's something in the basement. It sounded like the start of a horror film, but this was Walt, and he'd never once lied to me. At 3:11 a.m., I walked into the living room. The chessboard sat where it always had in a rickety end table near the window. I opened the box and slid my fingers under the felt lining. Click. A small trapdoor flipped open, revealing a brass key. Old, heavy, ice cold. The kind of key that belongs in a different century. I held it in my palm like it might burn me. I didn't move for 10 minutes. Then I turned. The basement door was in the hallway. It had a padlock on it. When I first moved in, one Walt always kept shut. But now, the lock was gone. I pushed open the door, and a wave of cold air crawled over my skin like wet fingers. The stairs groaned under me as I descended, flashlight in hand. Dust danced in the beam like ghosts. The basement smelled of oil, rust, and something older like forgotten time. The walls were lined with boxes, old tools, faded photographs. Single steel cabinet sat bolted into the back wall, covered in cobwebs and sealed with a lock. I used the key. Clicked. Inside was a leather briefcase. No dust on it, as if someone had opened it not long ago. My hands trembled as I placed it on the workbench and opened the latches. Click. Click. I opened the lid. Inside were 3 things: a stack of envelopes thick, sealed with different names written on each. A black and white photo of a young Walt standing with 2 men in army uniforms beside a military truck marked Fort Eddington, 1974. A bundle of cash, $10,000 in $100 bills, still crisp. Underneath the stack of envelopes was a folded document with a single word printed across the top: classified. My breath caught. Walt had never told me he was in the military, much less involved in anything secretive. Unfolded the document. It was heavily redacted, names blacked out, paragraphs cut short, but I caught a few chilling lines. Unauthorized operation involving biosignal interference in rural civilians. Unauthorized experiments halted following internal whistleblowing. Read. W. Reassigned and placed under observation. My hands started to sweat. What the hell had Walt been involved in? And why leave it to me? One envelope stood out. It had my name on it, written in the same shaky cursive as the letter upstairs. I opened it. The side was a will, notarized, signed. Everything Walt owned, the house, the land his savings was, now legally mine. But beneath that was something else. A second letter, shorter, darker. If you're still reading, I owe you the truth. What I did in 1974 led to the deaths of 5 people. I tried to stop it. I testified. I ran. But the guilt never left. I bought this house with hush money. I lived a lie for 45 years. I couldn't die without telling someone. You remind me of who I was supposed to be. If you want to make things right, those names on the envelopes, they're the families of the victims. Deliver the letters. Tell them I was sorry. And maybe free me. You don't owe me anything, but I hope you'll try. Walt. I sat there for hours. The silence was so loud it crushed me. Walt had trusted me with something bigger than inheritance. He wanted redemption. And somehow, he thought I could carry that weight. I looked at the envelopes. 7 names, 7 ghosts. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I didn't even wait a day. The first letter was addressed to Jared Hollis in Flagstaff, Arizona. I found an address in an auto repair shop and drove up the next morning with the envelope burning a hole in my pocket. Jared was in his 50s, bearded, tired eyes, working under a lifted SUV when I walked in. "You Jared Hollis?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, who's asking?" I pulled out the letter. "I'm here on behalf of Walter Reed. He asked me to give you this." His hands froze. His face went pale. He took the envelope. Read the name. Then dropped his wrench. 10 minutes later, we were sitting in his office, the door closed. He opened the letter with trembling fingers and read silently, a long pause. Then tears filled his eyes. "My brother Michael was one of them," he said. "One of who?" I asked gently. He looked at me. "They tested something on him, back when we were kids. Microwave signals. Said it was for science. My parents never knew the full story. Then one night Michael just stopped responding. Doctors said brain trauma. He never spoke again. Died at 16. I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He nodded. "Your guy, Walt?" He testified, "didn't he?" "Yeah," I said. But he said it wasn't enough. Jared stared out the window, his jaw clenched. It wasn't. But then he said something I didn't expect. "Thanks for bringing this. You didn't have to." He hugged me before I left. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the remaining envelopes, each one a ghost story, each one a landmine. Over the next few weeks, I visited 4 more people. A woman in Nevada whose sister had seizures for life, a former nurse in Utah whose son went missing from the experimental program, a retired journalist who'd investigated the Fort Eddington trials but got blacklisted. Each of them cried. Some yelled. One slammed the door in my face, but all of them took the letter. And with every one I delivered, the burden on my chest got heavier, not lighter. Then came the 6th envelope. This one was different. It was addressed to Dana McAllister in Denver. But when I got there, the address led to a burned-down house. I asked neighbors. They shook their heads. "That place went up last year. Don't think Dana ever lived there." I went back to the motel, frustrated. But then someone knocked on my door. I opened it. A man in a gray coat stood there, military build, cold eyes. "You've been asking about Dana McAllister?" he said. I froze. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. He reached into his jacket and handed me a card. "Just a phone number." "Noah Carter," he said calmly. "We're going to stop delivering those letters." I clenched my fists. "For what?" He smiled and walked away. I didn't sleep that night. At 2:03 a.m. I got a text. "Unknown number. You were warned." I looked out the window. A rental car was on fire. The fire department arrived too late. My rental car was a melted skeleton by sunrise. They said it was electrical. But I knew better. Whoever that man was, gray coat, cold eyes, he meant business. And now I had a decision to make. Stop digging. Or find out what was buried so deep the government still wanted it hidden 45 years later. I chose the second option. And I started with the last letter. It was unmarked. No address. No name. Just a single initial. R. Almost left it alone. Almost. Back at Walt's house, I searched every drawer, every cabinet, every box. Finally, in a hollowed-out book under his bed, I found an old photograph. 3 men in uniform, Walt. A man I didn't recognize. And someone who looked like Wait. I froze. I knew that face. It was the same man who'd come to my motel. The one who handed me the card, written on the back in shaky handwriting. 1975. Fort Eddington. WDR. The third man was R. And Walt knew him. Hell, they'd worked together. Which meant this wasn't just guilt. This was a web. And I was now tangled in it. The next day I got a call from a lawyer in Santa Fe. Said he represented the estate of Harriet M. Reed. My stomach turned. Red. As in. "Walt," the lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, I believe you were close with Walter Reed, correct?" I lived with him until he passed. Why? Well, he named you as emergency contact in another file. One related to an adopted daughter, a sealed record. You may want to come in. Adopted daughter. Walt never told me about a daughter. At the law office, they handed me a red folder marked confidential read, Harriet. Inside was a birth certificate, an adoption file, and a name. Harriet Reed McAllister. McAllister, I nearly dropped the folder. Dana McAllister wasn't just a victim's family. She was Walt's daughter, his only child. Annie never told me. According to the lawyer, Dana had gone off the grid 2 years ago. No phone, no address. She'd written a single letter to the office. Don't contact me again. My father is dead to me. But now I had her final envelope, the last thing Walt ever wrote to her. And the man in the gray coat was trying to keep it from reaching her. That night, I returned home, head spinning. As I opened the front door, I noticed something odd. The chessboard was gone, cabinet drawers open. Walt's oxygen tank tipped over. Someone had broken in, and they were looking for something. Maybe they thought I still had the letters. Maybe they thought I knew more. But I knew what this meant. I wasn't just a bystander in this story anymore. They saw me as a liability. And then the real twist hit me. Not from the files, not from the letters, but from a memory. Walt's final words in the hospital. You're the only one who's really here, Noah. He didn't just mean physically. He meant family. I pulled out the will again, read it line by line. There was one phrase I'd glossed over the first time. To my grandson, Noah Carter. I leave everything. My hands shook. Grandson. I wasn't just Walt's roommate. I was his blood, and he never told me. I sat on the floor of Walt's house, the will in one hand, the photo of the 3 soldiers in the other. Grandson. The word clung to my skin like cold sweat. I'd never known my father. My mother had died when I was 13. I spent half my life in foster homes and college dorms thinking I was alone. But Walt knew. He had to. He brought me in. Not just because I was kind, because I was his second chance. I didn't have time to mourn. The next morning I drove to Denver, chasing down every lead to find Dana. It took 2 days, a contact in social services, and a bribe at a local shelter before I found her name listed under a volunteer alias at a battered women's center. When I walked through the doors, I saw her immediately tall, graying hair pulled back, face strong but tired. She looked just like Walt. I approached her. Dana, she turned, guarded. Who's asking? I'm Noah Carter, Walt's grandson. Her eyes widened. She dropped the clipboard in her hands. We sat in a quiet corner of the center and I told her everything. About Walt, the house, the letters, the secret basement, the files. Her hands trembled. I always wondered if he'd send someone, she whispered, but I never thought it would be family. I gave her the letter, the final one Walt had written. She hesitated, then opened it. Her eyes scanned the page, her jaw clenched. Then her hands started to shake and tears spilled down her cheeks. She folded the letter. He never apologized to me when I was a child, she said. But this is the first real thing he's ever given me. She hugged me tight, and we cried together. 2 people connected by pain and blood, and a man who broke everything before he tried to make it right. That night, I made a decision. I posted the full story, online. I didn't name names. But I posted the documents, the declassified files, the letters, the will. The fact that the government still hadn't come clean? I shared photos of Walt, told the world about the man I lived with, who was more than just a lonely veteran. He was a hero and a monster, and a man trying to undo what couldn't be undone. The story went viral in 48 hours. My roommate left me $10 million and a deadly secret, a grandson's truth. Leaked docs confirm human testing. In 1970s Army trials, families demand justice. He wasn't a villain. He was broken. Internet reacts to emotional legacy post. The military launched a cold investigation. Politicians called for hearings. People from across the country began sharing their own stories about parents who never came home, or strange events buried by time. As for me, I took Walt's money. I used half of it to build something called the Yellow House Project at, nonprofit that offered housing and emotional support to veterans with estranged families. We started with one home in Arizona, Within a year, we had 4. Dana became co-director. She called it repayment on behalf of the father who never knew how to love. The rest of the money? I finally finished the app I'd built in that rusty RV, but not for tourists. It helped connect forgotten veterans and their families with history, with healthcare, and sometimes with each other. I still live in Walt's house. I kept the recliner, the chessboard, and one photo of him on the shelf, uniformed, smiling, before the secrets ruined him. Some nights I talk to him. I tell him what we're doing. And sometimes, I swear I feel the air shift like he's listening. I close this story with the final words Walt wrote in the corner of that letter to Dana. If you're reading this, I didn't get it right in time. But maybe my blood can. Maybe Noah can. And that's what I try to do. Every damn day. So now I ask you, if someone you loved made an unforgivable mistake, but tried to fix it at the end, do you forgive them? Or is some damage permanent? Let me know in the comments, because I still don't know my answer.